Hello, let me do a quick little thing on Hilary Mantel's collection, which Bodies and Pieces, I think it is what it is. It's a collection of her essays, reviews, kind of nonfiction pieces that she has done as a jobbing reviewer over the years. She When she first kind of entered the literary scene back from, I believe, Saudi Arabia, where she'd been with her husband. She didn't really know anybody in the literary world, so decided that one of the good ways to do that was to get jobs. £40 here, that there, get a regular column. So she, definitely been cranking these things out, working, setting her mind to it. I'm going to quickly kind of try and note things as they go along. So we get the introduction where she kind of talks about that, about doing it, and Cyril Connolly saying it's like important danger as a young writer to be doing this stuff. It might sap your energy, but and she seems to have avoided doing fiction reviews, more doing non-fiction reviews as her way of doing it, because she didn't want to kind of start imposing her ideas of the novel onto her ideas of fiction writing onto other fiction writers' work, and probably also gets more awkward when you're reviewing your own fellow novelists versus non-fiction people. So the first piece is one by Sherry Height. I think it's the Height Report, which was American feminist doing kind of a survey of women and just kind of really the shitty state of marriages, and her seeing, Mntl's reviewing it as like, yeah, it's like there's a lot of miserable women here with a lot of very uncommunicative men, or really emotionally repressed men. Though, interestingly enough, you have lesbians in this thing who seem to have actually the same kind of issues and problems come up. And there's no talk here of kind of the anti-feminist backlash. And, Mntl's like, well, Height takes it definitely as kind of from the feminist perspective of this is a political thing as more than it is a personal thing, which she says is probably small comfort to the hundreds and thousands, the women in these books that know that, oh, I've got hundreds of thousands of companions in my own misery in this book, and just sort of the ideas of it being a science and social science, and also being a feminist book of feminist social science, of how science has a kind of a history of studying women as objects, and how do you pull out of that, and how Height does and does not, just questions like, rate how happy your relationship is from 1 to 10, or that, we have multiple choice answers to her questionnaires, with, of course, essays in there, but that when she quotes from these essays, they all seem to have the sort of same voice, speak in the same jargon. It's either only one class of women has actually done the essays, or maybe Height is kind of gravitated towards those one, and they have a lot of the jargon of psychiatry in them, psychology in them, of women who have learned that particular lingo of emotions. So yeah, that was her first one. Second one is an interesting one on Salman Rushdie, and her saying, she was in Saudi Arabia, in Jaffa, I think I can't remember where, shopping for a bookshelf when she heard about the fatwa against Salman Rushdie, and just how that she couldn't find bookshelves, and actually indeed when she was first there, books in themselves were very hard to find. And she talks about the censors, and about trying to get books in and thinking, oh, I could just do it by a cover. If I put a cover over something that's worrisome, I won't have to worry. But actually, it's a culture that's really concerned about words and the power of words. The Quran, but just things as kind of mundane as soup mixes or soup recipes coming into the country on the back of boxes of soup mix, and them striking out the word pork in them, because you can't eradicate the idea of pork, but you can extinguish it actually ever being said in your culture. And just, that we in the West are seeing like, oh, why would they be so upset with the story? It's like these things are really important. These things are really political. And, we kind of had this failure in the West to kind of understand that, and just a live and let live attitude is seen as kind of our moral failure versus being something about acceptance or about toleration or openness. It's seen as more of moral failure, and that we should actually look in our own past, which this is coming from Hilary Mantel, author of the Wolf Hall, the Bring Up the Bodies, all the Thomas Cromwell books, where we really did fight these things out. The Bible, translation of the Bible was real. The gospel, we had our own kind of, the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, just the whole history of the Catholic Church of we had our own fatwas and obviously the no inquisitions and stuff like that. So seeing that, and just sort of how depressing it is that how many people had backslid from even supporting Rushdie. You have a young Tory MP saying, well, he made a lot of money on those books, why should we have to pay for his security guard? Kind of failing to recognize the that this is not just a private man's problems, but a very political problem, a political thing happening here, and that we owe Rushdie our support in that of our culture, and our war of words with another culture, and that their reaction to it, and how seriously they take words when we don't take words seriously. Sometimes it's the degradation of words in our culture. It's like how seriously, deadly seriously, in places like the Middle East, in places like if it was a communist bloc, or just other places where they really take stuff seriously, and authors can't hide behind, oh, it was a metaphor, stuff like that. And it's like, no, you meant this, you better explain yourself, and you might find yourself up against the wall for it. So yeah, there was that. She also reviewed the 2 volumes of John Osborne, a playwright who I think famous for Don't Look Back in Anger. He's kind of a part of that kind of, I think it's kitchen sink kind of realism playwright, who seems to have been very bileful, misogynistic, angry guy, starting out with a mother that he could never ever forgive, and extended that into many of the other women in his life, and who was basically in that kind of state of perpetual anger. And I mean, at one point in her review, she says, like, while you kind of wish you could give him a styptic pen to kind of help him close some of these wounds, however, self-mutilation is entertaining to watch, is fascinating to watch. And indeed, that's maybe some of the power of his playwriting and of this biography. So yes, those are the bits that I've so far read of Hilary Mantel, someone who's very sharp. God, honing yourself in this kind of a culture, the British culture, which can be absolutely savage and brutal to one another, extremely cutting, extremely wary of any kind of sentiment or of kind of just being woolly-headed, and also very much fighting hard on whatever their side is. Though Mantel really makes a point of saying that, like, I'm a party of one. I am not I'm not a Tory. I'm not a okay. There's the Tories. There is Labour. She doesn't see herself in that. Though there's at one point where I think she says, like, there's a reaction to her Royal Bodies piece, which is going to come up. I don't know what his name was, but the reporters start looking for her, and they said, like, oh, they hunted through the neighborhood to try and find me. I could watch them out the window, but of course my neighbors weren't going to let weren't going to let riffraff find me. It's just like, there's some class stuff going on in there. Those horrible yellow journalists trying to track down poor Hillary. her being, in some ways, a one of those rabid journalists in her own right, definitely with a sharp, blood-stained pen, perhaps. We'll see as we go along. All right, more videos later.